This is in response to Dr. Paul Krugman's article in the New York Times on Friday, January 15th, 2016. Is vast inequality necessary? Now, I would say just right from the beginning, of course not. But he does point out some very important things, and these things need to be looked at very closely as we assess the candidates in 2016. And Dr. Krugman poses a very great question. How rich do the rich need to be? Now, we know that with the Democrats say, oh, they don't need to be that rich. We need to tax them a little bit more so we can make more money available for early childhood education, pre- and postnatal care, college education, protecting the environment, being at the forefront as we try and lead this country into the 22nd century. The Republicans on the other side saying, don't need to invest in nothing. Just give all the money to the rich people and they'll figure out how to spend it, and we'll come out ahead. And of course, that has never happened. Has never come remotely close to being happening. Now, there are a couple reasons why there is inequality. And of course, and he points out a couple of them. Number one is that there is some people who are just, let's just say, overachievers. Are very capable of doing vast amounts of work. Their productivity is very, very high. There are others who are lucky. They're in the right place at the right time. I'm going to make an example of two in just a minute. Those who were born that way through their parents, the legacies, so to speak. And then also those who had power. And when I say power, when you have a rich person that has power, they have the ability to hire all of these sycophants and scumbuckets who can tout all of this happy horse crap about how the rich need to stay rich. And they can also enact laws that allow tax schedules, tax codes to be written so that they can pay less in taxes. And then it keeps those people who are writing those laws in Congress to keep being reelected in Congress. So to give a quick example of two, the first one is Bill Gates. Very smart guy, went to Harvard for about 6 months, dropped out to start Microsoft. His dad was very wealthy. His dad invested in the company. Shortly thereafter, IBM makes the decision, we need to start making a PC. Apple had made a PC, Texas Instruments, Singer, there have been another couple others. And what did they do? They did something they had never done before. They went outside their company to get, let's say a contractor to write the software for their PCs, which they had never been involved in. They were just mainframe companies. They were called Big Blue. They were being investigated for monopoly, and everyone hated them. So Bill Gates had Microsoft, and apparently there was another company that had an interview. There were a couple of companies that had interviews. One of them that had an interview that everyone thought had the best chance to be writing the software for the IBM PCs. The guy didn't even show up because, again, everyone hated IBM. Everyone hated Big Blue. So Microsoft showed up. Bill Gates hadn't bathed in 2 days, but, he talked the talk and they hired him. And so that's one great lucky thing. Second great lucky thing is that he didn't have to sign an exclusivity agreement with IBM, because IBM figured, well, no one can copy the code of our PCs because we are proprietary on the hardware. Well, that was true until our good friends at Texas Instruments basically did reverse engineering and made the hardware completely different that would run on Microsoft. So then the PC world exploded and Microsoft got all the money out of it. Now, Bill Gates, worth about $60 billion, now wants to use that money to give back and invest in a lot of things. I think he's investing in a lot of things medically, for diseases, to prevent people from dying, etc. But remember, he set it up in a foundation that he doesn't get taxed very much on. Now, the second example is the Koch brothers. The two of them combined are worth about $80 billion. And of course, they got all their money from their father because he croaked and he gave it all to them. And of course, what have they done with that money? They've done everything to screw over the average working person, do everything to get tax write-offs for big oil, to screw the environment in any way, shape, or form, and not be responsible for any of that. Now, Dr. Krugman points out also, it's the fact that there's never been a point in time where the vast inequality that we see right now has been able to be sustained, and that we do have examples where when that inequality was much smaller, that we had much greater growth in this country. His example is the United States in the 1950s and the 1960s, where the average tax rate for the rich at that point in time was 90%. Now, of course, at the same time, they had plenty of deductions, but our growth, now technologically, skyrocketed in the 50s and 60s. All right, so there is precedence that we don't have to have this vast inequality. Complete precedence. He also makes a point of talking about Sweden, which has a very, very strong social net, and that they have a good entrepreneurial quality there. And one of the reasons he theorizes is that, hey, there is a safety net there. I could take a chance because there is a safety net. I'm not going to rely on it all the way, but it's there in case I need it. And whereas in the United States, hey man, if you fall on your face, you fall on your face. You could lose every penny you had. And there's nothing to hold you, there's nothing to sustain you in the meantime. So there are plenty of examples of the United States and in other countries where we don't have to have a vast amount of inequality. And we need to bridge that gap and to decrease that inequality. And it should be brought up in this election, because as I mentioned right at the beginning, the Democrats want to tax the rich. They want to use that money for things that help the average working person. Whereas Republicans, they don't want to tax that money. They want to put all that money, they don't want to tax the money of the rich. They want to let the rich have all that money, and then the rich will decide, what they're going to do with that money. And that money, that they will invest that money, and everyone will benefit from that. And of course, there's not one precedent of that ever happening in the entire history of the world.